Hi, welcome. Happy Friday or Thursday, depending where you're joining us in the world. My name is Simi. I am the principal psychologist, executive leadership coach for Wellbeing Face, and we are a psychology coaching and consulting practice working with leaders globally to really elevate their leadership impact. I'm super excited to be here again with you all today. Please let me know if you've dialed in or where you're dialing in from. Let us know in the comments box. We'll be keeping an eye on the chat throughout today's session. And for those of you that are watching the replay, welcome to yourselves as well. We are going live today on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So we've got a really exciting topic, a topic that I'm hugely passionate about today. It's all about empathy, but we're going to look at it from a very different lens today. And we're going to be meeting the CFO that speaks empathy. Before I bring our wonderful guest on the stage, I'd really like to just share a brief bio about our wonderful guest. So I'll shortly be welcoming Ajits Dodani on stage. He's fondly called the CFO who speaks empathy. Ajits Dodani has had 20 plus years career as a C-suite executive, as a business and finance professional. It is during those years that he realized that empathy strategy he deployed was a real catalyst to sustainable organizational growth. His expertise and impact in culture change has been seen in both the education space and the corporate world as the empathy strategist at Empathify You. Empathify You offers a series of timely, unique, future-thinking workshops, keynotes, and strategy sessions titled Embracing an Empathy Strategy. They offer the ability for organizations to experience the journey of understanding the power of empathy for personal and organizational transformation. So I'm delighted to host today Ajits Dodani. So let's welcome him onto the screen. Hi, Ajit. How are you? Welcome.
I am awesome. Hello from Los Angeles to everybody watching from wherever you're joining us from. That's awesome. Simi, good to see you.
Incredible. It's always good to see you and really good to hear from you. Ajit and I actually met virtually 2020, I believe it was.
That's right. That's right.
We both shared a few rooms on Clubhouse. We were finding ourselves being in the same room, talking about very similar topics. And quite quickly, there was a synergy of hearts and minds. And we've stayed in contact since. It's been wonderful to be able to have you on today's live with us.
I've stayed in LA, but you've moved from UK to Australia. You know, you're the one jet setting. I'm staying put right here.
Well, isn't it amazing? From wherever we are in the world, we can just connect.
That's so true. That's so
absolutely. So I'm dialing in from Australia. You're dialing in from LA. Thank you, Ishi, to yourself. You're dialing in from Singapore. Wonderful. We've got Sharon. Welcome, Sharon. You're dialing in from Vancouver. And please let us know who else is dialing in. Let us know where you're dialing in from. It's great to have such a global audience. So today we're talking about the CFO that speaks empathy. Now, I'm really excited about our conversation today. Ajit, I'd love to first hear what is your backstory, because from my understanding, you've really worked your way up to being a CFO, the youngest ethnic minority holding a senior position in the organization that you worked in. So first and foremostly, I'd like to understand, what was that experience like?
So if you'll allow me, I'm going to go back a little bit so everybody understands who I am. So Ajits Journey, I was born in India, and I was actually born an empath. So I would feel more, sense more, walk into rooms and kind of get a feel of everything going on around me. And, you know, being a brown guy in India, my uncles would whack me in the head, say, you're not supposed to feel that much. Come on, you know, man up, be a man, you know, all that stuff. It's really toxic, actually, when you think about it. But it's kind of cool that years later that has become my superpower. It's always been my superpower. I knew about that. As I went into the corporate world, I became the CFO for a company called Benetton and for the West Coast office here. And we had a fantastic time. The CEO and I had a great relationship. We were scaling the organization, and obviously we grew really fast. So we deployed great financial, organizational systems and all that. But I always felt and I recognized that the empathy strategy that I sprinkled into every organization that I went into actually became the catalyst for growth. It actually bonded the groups and allowed some resilience to be created in the organization. I'm a writer, I'm a reader, so I started documenting everything that was going on. And that was a great journey. I had a fantastic CEO at that time, kind of said, okay, this guy's got his own little style, let me do my stuff. And as I moved on from there and navigated the corporate world as a consultant for years, it was really, really fun because Simi, I could not talk about empathy. I mean, imagine 16 years ago, I come to you and I say, I'm an empathy strategist. They'd look at you and go, so you're from
I
LA,
can
right?
imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would go in as finance and organization consulting and a strategist on that side. But the clients would always wonder, what is he doing with the people that's transforming the people? And that's what I always knew was the strength of any organization. So that grew into what today is Empathify You. And I'm just blessed. And Empathify You is not only Ajit, it's amazing superheroes that we have on our team. Natasha from Vancouver, Kavna from LA, Sanjay from LA, Ed from LA. And then we have JM. Now, listen to this one. JM is from Barcelona, and he's not an empath. For him, empathy had to be learned. And he's actually our empathy evangelist. And I love that when we walk into organizations, we don't show up as all, I'm an empath. JM shows up and goes, I am not an empath. I
Yeah.
have to learn empathy. Because if I
Incredible.
didn't learn empathy,
Yeah.
I know I'm leaving. And he's a high-level venture capitalist, investor, and he clearly defines that if you don't have empathy, you're not able to maximize returns for your shareholders. So we
Yeah.
speak the same language. I as an empath and him as a non-empath, and it's so fun. So Empathify
Amazing.
You is a group of superheroes from around the world that were out there talking about empathy and empowering people with that.
And you're doing incredible work.
Thank
You're
you.
really making such an impact. It's absolutely clear to see that impact that you're making. Let's pause for a moment because we talk about empathy, we band it around, and just for our audience and for you and I as well, let's get a clear definition on what we mean by empathy. So when I talk to my clients about empathy, I talk about it in two ways. Talk about it as effective empathy and cognitive empathy. Effective empathy being whereby you are able to really kind of tune into other people's emotional states. And that can be really positive because what happens is we kick into action because we want to go and help someone that's in distress.
Mm-hmm.
But the downside of that is we often can then really get too emotionally involved, whereby we're then not able to effectively help somebody. So that's effective empathy. And then if we look at cognitive empathy, that essentially is looking at things from another person's lens. So actually taking that effort to step into somebody else's shoes and get a sense of what they're feeling, but also how they're thinking about things. And when we do that, when we go into that position, we're then really able to effectively understand the other person, negotiate, and also become an inclusive leader, really tune into what they need as well. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Like, how do you define empathy to your clients?
So the first two, emotional, cognitive. The third level that we add, and it's the science behind that, is compassionate empathy, right? That when you see something happening, you have to take action, right?
Yeah.
Most people, when you say the word empathy, they equate it to emotional empathy. And emotional empathy has to be capped because it can almost be deliberate. You can't act if you have too much emotional empathy. That
Yeah.
emotional empathy has to be balanced by cognitive empathy, and then you have to have compassionate empathy. Our focus is around compassionate empathy, right?
Mhm.
So So the way we define it, the horizon that we're chasing when we work with an organization, I'll read it off for you, is this. And this is our definition of
Yeah.
how we look at as an empathy strategy being deployed in an organization. So here's the statement. This is the horizon we're chasing. Once I know who I am
Yeah.
and I empathize and learn to respect who you are, we are able to respectfully sit on the same table,
Mhm.
bringing our whole selves to solve any problem that comes our way. So the journey that I have gone through and we take our clients through is that entire journey. Because that for us becomes the process, spending time and understanding who am I, right? Who I really am. And then down that whole journey to come to a point to solve any problem. So you've got to go down that entire definition there to understand what we do. Does that answer your question, Simi, for you?
Yeah, and that's very powerful, really powerful. And what it really resonates with me is it links and connects very closely and clearly to inclusive leadership. To be an
100%.
inclusive leader, this is one of the key components,
Yeah.
key skills that leaders really must develop.
Yeah. 100%. That's why we're chatting.
Love it. So, look, I would really like to understand from you then, what should leaders be thinking about or considering when they're building the case for empathy? So, when they're talking to other CFOs, or they're talking to their CFO in the organization, or they're talking to other leaders in the organization, how do we really get other leaders to take empathy seriously? What is a business case essentially behind it from your lens? Because what you've done really works.
So I'm going to ask you a question. Simi, why do we have brakes in our cars?
So we can stop the car.
That's right. Now, I want to tell you why we have brakes in our cars. We have brakes in our cars because it allows us to go really, really, really fast.
Mm.
Because we trust that the brakes are there,
Mhm.
that when we press on the pedal, it's going to stop the car. So
Mm.
brakes don't allow us to stop only, it allows us to go really fast. We have faith that it's going to go fast, right?
Yeah.
So that brake that we look for in an organization is the word
Mm.
trust. Okay, trust allows us to move fast.
Mm.
And before trust, if this is trust, what comes below trust? All the work we do is building up to trust. Because
Mm.
when you have high levels of empathy in an organization, you have high levels of trust and you have high
Mm.
levels of engagement. So let's go
Mm.
back to the vision that I was talking about. Once I know who I am, right? I know myself, I know my shadow values, I know how I'm showing up for my team, really, not just once I know myself, and we are about 60% of our workshops is around once I know who I am, right?
Mm.
Then I empathize and learn to respect who you are. I help you show up uncovered. So we do all the workshops around the framework of uncovering talent. Most of our employees show up at work and only 60% of their brain is present. 40% of the brain is not there because of a bias, because of non-inclusion, just like you talk about, right? So the empathy strategy goes and doesn't put a band-aid on top and say, hey, if your employees are getting a second job, don't find a way to stop them from getting a second job. Find a way to build trust so they want to be engaged and involved with you fully. Because if
Mm.
you invite somebody and make them feel respected and they feel trusted in an organization, they're going to give you your best. And they'll not want to go get another job. Right
Yeah.
now, disengagement is at its highest. You know, a lot of CEOs we talk to, and they're like, ooh, we're doing really well. We've lost only 2% of our employees and stuff like that. And then what we do, we show up there and we say, give us all your surveys, but what we're going to do is a little different. We're going to pick up the phone and call all your people. They're like, "You want to call up?" I said, "Yeah, because I'm sorry, everybody lies on the surveys.
Surveys.
So let's find out." And what we find is people get emotional. They're talking about stuff after a little while, after we build some trust, and they're disengaged. The word we talk about, one of the insights we're getting is that they've quietly quit the organization and they're
Mm.
hanging out because, hey, I get some benefits. I can be here for a little while, but I'm not going to contribute. I'm not going to raise my hand because I know that the case that my boss may not really be watching out for me. Or what
Mm.
can I do to create that? Because here's what happens when you build trust and you get them engaged. What happens is you have higher levels of communication, great collaboration, innovation, and that leads to dollars and cents. If
Mm.
we don't have that, the reverse is we're losing money because of the incivility, the fact that we're not showing up as our fullest. And it's a cost that you have to pay. I get this all the time. I'll sit in front of a board and somebody will say, empathy strategist, do we really need empathy? I said, listen, sir, you might have gone to Harvard or Yale, wherever you went to school to. None of us were taught how to lead a workplace like this. The last 2 years flipped everything
Yeah.
we knew upside down. Let's not go to same old, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not doing this, if you have incivility, you're not focused on empathy. If you have 50 people in an organization, 3 people that are incivil, you're losing $130,000 in man hours. And then a $10 million company, you're losing about $1.3 million in innovation. You decide, sir, whether you want to embrace empathy or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's dollars and cents. And suddenly they're like, hold on. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, to you and I, completely, it makes sense. Absolutely. And, that's really powerful how you just shared that scenario and the business case for it. When we look at well-being and we look at inclusion, again, the research really shows that if you have an environment where people feel they can be themselves, your first part of your model is self-awareness, where you're aware, but then also being in an environment where you can actually bring out your best self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That absolutely encourages people to create, well, it gives them a sense of belonging. When
100.
people belong, when they feel like they belong, they're able to be their best selves. They're able to share their views and ideas and not worry too much at all, actually, whether they're going to be accepted, whether others are going to have their back. So, what you're doing is you're actually unlocking discretionary effort by taking that approach.
Yeah.
And also, if you look at well-being, if people are able to if people are included, they feel like they belong, their well-being absolutely increases. They're psychologically and cognitively able to be a lot more focused on their work. They're able to, like you said, solve complex problems, decision make effectively. When your well-being's low, when you're feeling excluded, when you're not feeling like you're in a trusted environment, all of that cognitive um, capacity gets detracted, and it goes to what we call social cognition.
Yeah. 100%.
And you're just there, aren't you? Thinking, well, do I belong? Is my work valued? Am I going to progress in this organization? And I think it goes to your point, what you said, people silently then check out.
100%.
And when they silently check out, what do? We start looking for a better opportunity elsewhere.
Yeah. And they're smiling, and the manager's like,
Yeah.
"Oh my God, they were smiling. They were here. I didn't have any sense," because they're like, "Hey, you don't care." You triggered something. Um, this is DEI, right? And you do a lot of work on inclusion, and I love the way you approach inclusion. But you and I know people that check out as soon as you say DNI, they check out. They're like, "Oh no,
Yeah.
another DEI workshop." And this comment from somebody that attended a workshop really speaks to what we talk about. I've attended workshops that have taught me compliance and language, but your workshops worked on me.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and, and we go in really deep to help them navigate that. So yeah, you bring up a really good point, because sometimes the D and I becomes, okay, this is the language you have to use, and they're waiting to use that language. No, it's about let's get really comfortable with ourselves so we can really help other people shine around us too.
Absolutely. And I think a big part of that getting comfortable about ourselves, but then being able to be comfortable around others, there's got to be an environment that fosters that.
Yep.
Because in a sense, you've got to be prepared to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
So when we want to build trust with others, I see it in terms of a bit of a triad actually. If we look at I can't remember the Harvard professor's name now, but she talks about a fabulous triangle, trust triangle, where at the
Mhm.
top you've got authenticity,
Yeah. Yeah.
the corner you've got logic, and then you've got empathy. And those
Mhm.
three characteristics are what she really says are the firm building blocks of building trust.
Yep.
And quite often what happens is a lot of leaders over kind of that triangle isn't balanced. They're either spending too much time on the logic, let's get this business case over the line, but where's the human element of it?
Yeah.
Where's the personal element where we really tap into being ourselves and let others see that as well?
It's the famous quote, right? Steve Wozniak telling Steve Jobs, "You can be brilliant and decent at the same time," right?
Yeah,
And that is truly what we're after, a world where
yeah,
um, you can show up at your work with your fullest self, sit
yeah,
alongside people, people understand and can navigate incivility. The
mm,
rest of the team understands how to handle somebody that that
mm,
has behavior that is not inclusive in using your
mm,
framework. And an empathy strategy is about going to the root cause of this, right? So, for
mm,
example, a great example is like when we'll do workshops, right? People say, so the next workshop, and we typically don't, we let them come in with a surprise. Obviously, the leadership knows, but the team doesn't know what we're covering next. And they walk in and we
yeah,
put up a topic like communication, and they're like, oh, I've been through communication. And the first thing we talk about is listening to yourself. And they're
mm,
like going, wait, what are we talking about? Like, just happened last week, right? What are
yeah,
we, so let's talk about how do you actually listen, right?
mm,
Listen to yourself when you walk into a room, and we're giving them a vision that, okay, when you walk into a room, and I'll read this out to you, right? So this is that when you're walking into a room, are you able to tell yourself this honestly? I am present. I trust myself. I'm enough. I'm open to new ideas, new people, and new possibilities. Are you
mm,
able to say that? Or are you coming into a meeting, just running from another meeting? Oh, I've been busy all day. I have this agenda to, but wait, you're not listening. If you're not actively listening, you're losing money because great ideas are being thrown around. And
correct,
you, Mr. C, whatever, if you're on a rush and a rate, just running 100 miles an hour and you're not able to be present because we are hyper focused on presence. So we have a
yeah,
workshop around prepare, perform, recover, and we talk about how can you stay present at a high.
yeah,
We have a complete strategy where we teach leadership, executive presence at a very high level because they don't learn it. They're
yeah,
leaving money on the table. Their ideas being dropped. People are not speaking up because they're coming in as a jet into a meeting. Oh my God, I've been, I'm sorry. Do you want me to applaud you for not understanding how to manage your energy? I'm
yeah,
sorry. I don't. I recognize that we may not have been trained, but in
yeah,
2022, a leader has to learn how to manage his energy, show
yeah,
up as its fullest self, create an environment where people are able to present their ideas, and they have the cognition and understanding and presence to say, oh wait, when you're on
mm,
a customer call, you're not trying to sell them. Because one of the greatest compliments we got recently was when somebody said, because of your work, we today have a cultural advantage. We got a deal because when this organization was working with our team, they saw how we listened to each other, how we listened to them, how we worked together, how we edified each other. Words that are not used in the corporate world. We weren't taught that in school, right? So
yeah,
when people hear that, that brings dollars and cents. That translates. That executive presence started at a very high level, translates to dollars and cents. And all of a sudden, they're like, oh my God, it was right under my nose, and it's part of it is breathing anyways.
yeah, absolutely. And it refers back to your analogy of being in the car. Put the brakes on. Let's pause.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because so many leaders go from meeting to meeting, they don't take that break to really pause, reflect, and reset.
Mhm.
And with that, then we're not essentially checking in with how we're feeling. And secondly, we're not then able to manage the impact that we have on those around us.
Yeah. It folks on our team say, people have so many windows open and they keep opening more windows in their head. You've seen that, meme
Yep.
out there. People have so many windows, right? Before I walk into a meeting, I've got to close all my windows and I open a fresh window for Simi. Just before I got onto this call with you, spend some time doing some breath work myself. Because I had to
Yep.
reset, I had to show up as my best self. Did the
I'm
fit
saying.
hit the shan today? Yes, the fit hit the shan, and stuff happened, right? We run businesses every day.
Yeah.
The fit is going to hit the shan, but
Yeah.
that is not our excuse for me not to show up as my best self for
Yeah.
sin, right? And so that ability to show up and close all those tabs, close all those windows,
Yeah.
and we use all kinds of stuff that is just amazing, that empowers people. That you
Yeah.
see executives that walk in and they're like very uncomfortable with it, and then after a few weeks we're like, and they suddenly start seeing not only themselves improve at work but in their
Yeah.
lives, with their family, with their
Yeah.
kids, and when their relationship outside work, and they're like, wait, what's going on? I'm listening better. My spouse, my partner, my son is saying these comments that, Dad, you're present. Like, wait,
Yeah.
what happened to my dad? That's what we're
Yeah.
after. A world where we can say we work really hard, but we have a great time with everything else. The
Mm.
collateral is very, very little.
So, so true. And do you know what? This is what we remember. We don't remember essentially what people have said. We remember
Mhm.
how we felt in their presence.
True,
And by
true.
fully being present with the person who's in front of you is hugely powerful.
It's like you. It's like how you made me feel the first time we met, right? The words you use, the way you spoke, the way you listen, right? That that's told me, check, Simi is in my circle, right? Are we the same? No, we're different people. We have different styles, but
Yeah.
that basic respect built trust
Yeah.
from trash 10,000 miles away, right?
Yeah.
And here we are moving forward to some magic that we'll create in Australia.
Appreciate you, Ajit. Absolutely. So, look, I just want to turn to the audience. If you have any questions for myself or Ajit, please post them in the chat. We've got a few minutes left, so I'd love to hear from any of you. And Sharon, thank you so much for putting a link in there for the trust triangle. It's an excellent HBR article, so I really appreciate you sharing that for our listeners as well. Ajit, I would also just like to ask you one final question. Other than people silently checking out, is there any other significant insight that comes up time and time again?
Yeah, I know we spoke about this, and I'm looking at a whole bunch. I'll tell you one thing, that it's the concept of dark stories and conspiracy theories. So
Okay.
most people are used to the power of storytelling and how it's so great and so empowering, right? But what we're
Mm,
finding is, because of the political turmoil that's happened around the world, people
mm,
are drawn to partisan stories, right? And people love getting attached to conspiracy theories. So
yeah.
your hero is my villain, and my villain is your hero, right?
Mm,
And so those dark stories and conspiracy theories that have happened in the political and the global world are now showing up in organizations. So we're finding little clusters of conspiracy
mm,
theories all over the organization, and people love them. People want to find the enemy, right?
yeah.
And through storytelling, and we teach that in a very deep level. If you know my background, the story work we've done in storytelling in schools and everything,
Yeah.
we teach how do you take micro storytelling and
Yeah.
deploy it in your organization. Because if you're not telling stories, the conspiracy theory wins in the organization. And
Mm,
those dark stories that we're seeing in organization, uh, you have to really get to know your people till they go. The other day, somebody actually broke down in one of our conversations, said, you know what, this is really where I'm at. This is why I'm not giving it by 100%, because I believe this of my leader. Because today leaders, like, if you look at the Edelman Trust Barometer,
yeah.
businesses are required to stand up and speak on various things. So I think understanding that and knowing how to
Mm,
challenge that, and bring, there are great honest leaders out there, but they've not been trained in these
yeah.
skills. How do you counter this?
Yeah.
So that would be one that I would just add on here right now.
And that's really fascinating, Ajit, because, as we know, social media absolutely has kind of led to these very polarized views.
Mm-hmm.
Myself and my husband were talking about this the other day, and it's really interesting because you have people that are kind of in camp A and then people that are in camp B, and the views are very strongly held. But then you have this huge population that have got views, but they're not so extreme in either camps. But what's happening is their message or their will to share their message and their story isn't coming across.
Yeah. It's so true. But like even when we show up, right? When a program that is called an empathy strategy shows up in a company, there is a partisan reception to us. Very clearly, you can see those that are camp empathy and those are like,
Imagine.
oh my God. I say this story because I remember years ago working in an organization where I was leading this side of the division and there was another side across the country. And the same fit hit the shan. There were problems going on. And this team that had built its foundation on empathy, that had, working with them for years and built, we went through the same problem. People are sending emails, oh, I'm hanging out at 11 o'clock. We're having lunch together, dinner together at midnight and all. And we're working, I was in finance. So we'd work really, really hard. Now, the same thing was happening on the East Coast, but that leader there had not accepted my framework. And he's like, whatever. Complaints, emails to the CEO. I can't believe it. We're working to this late. What's going on? What kind of. So there is that empathy that was created in that organization, those stories that got tied, and the work that was done for months and months and months showed up when the fit hit the shan, right? Because otherwise it would break. And we had the same, and that was a beautiful model of how empathy you can go through a situation in a collaborative way versus go through a situation and start pointing fingers at each other. So
Yeah. Wow, really powerful example. Thank you, Ajit. I can't believe that our time has come to an end so quickly.
that's true.
You and I feel I could just talk to you for ages. It's been a real pleasure to have you here today.
Same
Thank you
here.
so much for sharing your insights. And I asked you the question in terms of how can people contact you, and you mentioned to me that yourself and your team at Empathify You offer workshops, keynotes, and strategy sessions to help your team embrace empathy as a superpower. It absolutely is a superpower. So if you'd really like to learn more, please feel free to connect with Ajit on LinkedIn and visit their website as well, Empathify You. It's
Thank
been a
you.
great pleasure to have you here. Any final words from yourself?
You're awesome. Keep being you. Keep sharing those stories on LinkedIn. They're amazing. Those personal, honest stories. We need more leaders like you, Simi, that tell honest stories where it's not a straight line. It's not always up. We're going through a journey, and those kind of stories, they start, working on people. So I appreciate that. So just keep being you. That's my final word for you.
Appreciate you so much, and really a big big applaud to yourself and your amazing team at Empathify You. You're doing incredible work. Keep going, and I really look forward for us to connect again very soon.
That's right. See ya.
Amazing. Thank you, and thank you to everybody that's joined today's conversation. We look forward to hosting our next live, which will be next Friday at the same time. Connecting, tune in, and link back with us on LinkedIn, and we'll keep you updated on next week's topic. Look forward to seeing you then. Wishing you all a wonderful rest of the day.